Okay, hello. I'm Anna Povey from a student from Redmond High School, and I'm going to be presenting my paper, FeruzaSpeech, a 60-hour Uzbek Red Speech Corpus with punctuation, casing, and context. And my co-author on this paper was my sister, Katherine Povey, from the University of Washington. Okay. The purpose behind this paper was to improve Uzbek ASR models by combining FeruzaSpeech with existing datasets for training. And the reason why we chose Uzbek was because there are currently upwards of 30 million native Uzbek speakers in Central Asia, but there is a large lack of Uzbek datasets for training ASR and text-to-speech models because Uzbek is a low resource language. FeruzaSpeech is a 60-hour Uzbek speech corpus with transcriptions in both Cyrillic and Latin alphabets. And a key feature of our audio was that it was from a single native female speaker from Tashkent reading excerpts from a popular book, Uzbek book, Çalıkışı, and BBC News articles. And our dataset provides dual alphabet transcription because in January 2023, the Uzbek government transitioned the alphabet from Cyrillic to Latin. However, much of the older generation still prefers and still uses the Cyrillic alphabet, so we're hoping that this dataset can make ASR technologies more available for the older generations. And FeruzaSpeech is the first dataset to include both Cyrillic and Latin transcriptions, and to the best of our knowledge, is the first dataset to include Cyrillic transcriptions at all in the Uzbek language. We faced a challenge creating our dual alphabet transcription because the current conversion calculators are not accurate. So it was already difficult to transliterate between Cyrillic to Latin. However, transliterating from Latin to Cyrillic is currently basically impossible with the current technologies because there's certain letters in the Cyrillic alphabet that get lost when transliterating to the Latin alphabet, such as the soft sign and the hard sign in the Cyrillic alphabet. So this is an example of where the soft sign is being incorrectly reproduced. Sometimes it's incorrectly reproduced, sometimes it's just lost completely. And the solution to this issue is after converting Cyrillic text to Latin using online conversion calculators, we also had to go back and manually fix transliteration errors as well. Our dataset composition is 60 hours of high quality audio. And the reason why our audio is so high quality is because it was human generated, not automatically generated. So basically the segments of these 16-second long segments were created during the recording process and were 1 to 2 sentences read speech. So our average segment length was 16 seconds. And I think this is pretty typical, but the other two datasets that we used, the Uzbek Speech Corpus and the CommonVoice dataset, they had segments that were 2 to 3 seconds long. I think this is a bit short, and 16 seconds does provide for more context. Okay, our dataset composition had 3 sets. It had dev, test, and train, and our audio was single channel 16-bit wave audio file available in 16 kilohertz sampling rate, and this is the standard for speech to text. Experiments. We built our models using the next-gen Kaldi tools using their open source code. And the recipes we used were the ICNLSP CommonVoice stateless RNNT conformer, the directory being the prune transducer stateless 7 recipe. And the reason why we chose this model was because ICNLSP already included CommonVoice scripts with this recipe for French, so it was very easy to apply for the Uzbek text as well. So we also chose the LibreSpeech zip former because it is the current state-of-the-art model in next-gen Kaldi, and it is what the team recommended. So all of our models were trained for 60 epochs. We utilized 3 datasets: the CommonVoice dataset, the FeruzaSpeech dataset, and the Uzbek Speech Corpus. And we trained our models using a combination of these datasets. Okay, here are our experiments and our results. We trained, this is for the stateless RNN-T conformer model, and we basically trained, so there are 4 models for each table that were trained using these combinations of data sets, and there were 2 decoding methods, greedy search and modified beam search. So between these 2 tables, there are 8 models that were trained. And when FeruzaSpeech was added to CommonVoice, we saw an improvement in word error rate between 1.5 to 2.12% absolutely for CV test. So if this was the initial, this was the after, this was the initial, this was the after. And we saw a difference of 3 to 4.6% improvement absolutely on the USC test. So this was the before, this was the after, this was the before, this was the after. Okay, we also trained the zip former model. We did less experiments with the zip former model because it seemed to have been performing worse. So, and I'm going to get into that later. But when FeruzaSpeech was added to CV, we saw an improved word error rate between 0.6 to 1.1%. So here to here, and we on CV test, and 0.5 to 1.5% absolutely on USC test. So here to here. Our results, more results are on the USC paper, a word error rate of 17.4% was reported on the USC test, but we achieved a USC test of 11.7% on our best experiment, the stateless RNN-T conformer model using modified beam search decoding method, trained on all 3 data sets. And the reason why the zip former performed, actually, the reason why the zip former performed worse than expected, I'm not quite sure right now, but it wasn't, but basically the issue we ran into when first running the zip former was it wasn't converging when we used the large zip former, so then we used a small zip former configuration, but so perhaps there still wasn't enough data or it still wasn't converging properly, but that's my hypothesis. Limitations. FeruzaSpeech is not an effective standalone and like standalone data set to be training TTS models. I mean, speech to text models, and it should be utilized alongside other corpuses. And because it has virtually no acoustic diversity with no background noise and a single female speaker, and that is not optimal for ASR models. But in conclusion, FeruzaSpeech is beneficial for ASR model enhancements when used in addition to existing Uzbek language datasets as observed in our word error rate improvements. And all of the reasons why FeruzaSpeech was not suitable for speech to text, it makes it very suitable for text to speech. And we will be providing the same data in a higher sampling rate and bit depth that will be more suitable for text to speech. And we will also focus on expanding this corpus with additional recordings from the same native speaker. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.